Okay, how is everybody? Great. Are you properly caffeinated? Okay, I am. I've had 4 cups, so I'm ready to rock and roll today. My name is Lisa Bodell. I'm the CEO of a company called Future Think. It's a company that I founded just shy of 20 years ago. We're in New York City, right across from Grand Central. And I have teams that are located across the world in Singapore, in Frankfurt, in London, across the United States. And they all travel to about 30 countries a year, helping leaders better embrace change and question their assumptions. And I'll talk a little bit more about how hard that task is in a minute. I know that my job, actually, as the first speaker, is to set the tone. And I had the pleasure a couple weeks ago now to do the session in New York. And I will tell you, it's a really great event. It's a really great event. I speak on average to, this year, if I do it right, I'll speak to about 100,000 people. So I see a lot of events, and I'll tell you that this event is really kick-ass. You all are here to meet really great people in this room. They showed the brands that Jane put up there. They're really awesome. The event is very interactive. There's lots of great people. I was really inspired when I left there a couple weeks ago. So you've earned being here. This is not my 5-second plug for Google, but it's really great. I hope you take advantage of it because I think it's one of those things that you'll look back on and say, I'm really glad I got to attend. So again, my job is to set the tone today. And one of the things we want to do is collaborate with each other. And I know we're busy, and frankly, I think a lot of times we can be very shy, even if we're extroverted. So what I wanted to do in terms of innovation and change was change up a little how we interact today. And what I thought I would do is I thought we would blow through about 200 or 300 PowerPoint slides. Does that work for you? No? Not good? All right. We're not going to do that. Instead, what I want to do is rather than have you settle into your seat, I want you to be on the edge of it, and part of the time, I want you to be up out of it. So everybody put whatever's in your hands down on the floor, please. And I'd like you to stand up for me. Just stand up. Can I get my first slide up here? There we go. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to raise the hand that you write with. Can you raise the hand that you write with? Good. I knew you guys were smart. This is good. This is also the hand, technically, and this is science, people, that you high five with. High five 5 people right now that you're going to meet later today. Let's do it around the room, everybody. Good morning. Up here. Someone give it to me. Good. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hi. Good morning. How you doing? Nice to meet you. Hi. All right, stay standing. There's some actually aggressive slapping in the back, so I want to stop it. I don't want to get sued, people. All right, listen, there's a purpose for everything that I do. My background, and I could go into it ad nauseum, is I'm a recovering ad agency person. I worked at lots of different ad agencies, Leo Burnett, BBDO, on every account you never wanted to work on, by the way. But it was a great experience for me. And I will tell you that one of the things that I learned is everything needs a purpose. It's the Midwesterner in me. I grew up in Michigan and then in Chicago. And while a lot of people focus on sizzle, I focus on steak. And I really want to give you guys some tools and some learnings that you can take away that will help your job every day. And one of the things that we're doing right now is something you can use back in your brainstorms. Most of the time during the day, what do? You sit on your butt all day long, right? You sit on your butt in meetings, at your desk, whatever it is. One of the ways that you can actually start thinking, getting out of your brainstem back here, up through your limbic system, which is where emotions reside, into your frontal or neocortex, is by getting up and moving. In fact, some of the best ways to turn on your brain and come up with new ideas is to have some motion. Other ways that you can actually start to map and want to meet people is by having physical contact. Watch how you do it, of course, and eye contact. It forces you to get out and learn and connect. There's science that has shown that if you give a group of people a challenge and you have them brainstorm ideas, separate them into 2 rooms, brainstorm ideas, both groups will come up with good ideas. But the group that comes up with the best ideas were the ones that actually did a different activity for the first 5 minutes than actually working on the actual problem. So if you go in and you do something silly like, guys, let's have some high fives. Let's get up to move to think. Let's actually do an icebreaker. It will be a much more productive brainstorm. Call it strategic fun, whatever you have to do to feel good about it. That's one thing. The second thing is movement is important. You sit on your butts all day and that's bad. You've probably read a lot of research lately of why you need to move to think. This is called, does anyone know what movement in terms of learning is called? Right, kinesthetic learning. So many people today, you can be an oral learner. Many people are visual learners because they sit in front of a screen and they think they're very visual. There's a small percentage of the population that is kinesthetic learners. I am one of those people. These are people that are often diagnosed at a young age of having ADD. Right? Rightly or wrongly, by the way. And what happens is a lot of people, because we're taught to sit down and to focus, sit still, and many people can't. So sometimes you got to shake up the kind of learning within your group because people learn in different ways. Kinesthetic learning is something we are going to do together today. Is that okay? All right, let's sit on down. That's enough preaching for the moment. All right, so I mentioned that I have trainers. I have 17 of them that are across the world. And we meet some really great people. I mean, I have to say, on those moments when I just feel very stressed out and I've had a long day, I sit back and I reflect on the cool things I get to do. I mean, look, I'm here today. This is pretty cool, right? And my trainers, it's interesting, we go out and our job is to teach people change, right? Leaders come to us and they say, help us be more innovative. Help us change the culture. And so we go out and we do. We come there, and wouldn't you know, the very people that often ask us to come out and teach their teams are the very people that resist it when we get there. Right? Sound familiar? You don't realize sometimes, nor do your bosses, if you want to blame upward, that they have a mindset that prevents them from change, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I couldn't figure out why change could be so hard for people. And that was one of the reasons I set out and I did some research for my book, Kill the Company, which came out a little more than a year ago. It's not about killing your company. It's about getting rid of things that don't work to make space for things that do. And my hypothesis was we were going about change all wrong. And what you'll read about in my book, and I hope you read it, and let me know if you liked it or not, is that how we approach change today is all wrong because we focus on the wrong things. So the very structures and things that we put in place to help us be more innovative, meetings, reports, processes, are the very things that hold us back from actually taking that risk. And I think for a lot of times, with innovation, sometimes the first thing you have to do isn't to do more, but actually to do less and to stop doing things. To get rid of the things that you do every day because you normally don't question them, to make space for simpler, better things that can help you move forward. And I'm going to give you some of those tools today. Does that sound good? Okay. So 2 things I want to accomplish. The first thing is I want to inspire you. I want to give you tools that make you think, I can do that. Because I believe that everybody is innovative. They just need to know how. So I want to inspire you. The second thing is I really want to make you feel uncomfortable. And the reason I want to do that, no, it's on purpose, right? Because unless there is some kind of contrast, nothing moves forward. You need agitation for things to change. And there's a big difference between contrast and conflict. Conflict is negative, it's personal. Contrast is questioning how things happen. And so if I ask you something today and it makes you feel uncomfortable, I want you to ask yourself, why? I'm not the expert at your job. The future is not written in stone. If I ask you something that makes you feel uncomfortable, it means I am questioning your assumption. And you need to ask yourself, why? And to me, that's the best thing that can happen. So the other thing that Jane, I'll just add one more plug in here today. I'm going to give you a lot of tweetable moments, as I like to call them, throughout this presentation. And one thing that Jane offered, she said, if you guys tweet a lot during the event, there's going to be a prize for you. And it's true. But there's an extra special prize that I talked with her about if you actually tweet regarding this presentation. I talked to Jane, and she ran up the flagpole at Google, because my whole thing is about change and innovation, is the person who tweets the most tweetable moments here, I asked her, would get a driverless car. What do you guys think? Would that be cool? Clap if you think that would be cool. You like that? Okay. Well, that's unfortunate because she told me no, we can't do it. So that's not going to work. So I worked with my kids, and we actually came up with a solution because I want you to have the car. So if you do spend a lot of time tweeting and having some tweetable moments, I will give you a car. It's driverless. And my daughter said the GPS works. If you can't hear it, she'll run behind you as you drive it. So that's good. So tweetable moments at Lisa Bodell. Okay, so let's dive in and let's actually do some real work. All right, here we go. So this is one of my favorite quotes. It says, change is not mandatory and survival is not required. Right? Why is it that we resist change so much? right? We know it's important, frankly, not just for survival. We're past that in our first world problems, but for success. What do we have to do? And I think there's two fundamental things that are holding you back that you know, but you just don't articulate it. The first thing is one that you know, it's context. Now here's what we as futurists, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute, think is a very overused quote, right? This is a quote from Henry Ford who said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. Many of you know this quote. The point is not about faster horse. The point is about context. What often happens in innovation is that the more bizarre the idea, the more people shut it down because they can't understand it. When Henry Ford was saying, what could make your life easier, so to speak, they couldn't say I need something on wheels, on a chassis powered by gasoline. It didn't exist, right? So what did they say? Faster horse. I need mobility. And they discerned the problem and made a solution. Now, how this has happened for some of you here in the room, right, that are in their 40s and 50s. Back in the 70s, actually it happened starting in the 60s, but it started to get articulated when this was patented in the 70s, is banks. Banks started asking consumers, so I'm not talking about investment banks, I'm talking about retail. They asked consumers, how can we make your banking experience better? How can we improve your banking experience? So they interviewed thousands of people, all different banks. I've read the research. What did people say? Stay open late. What else? Okay, what they said was, we want more tellers, right? Well, how can we make your banking experience better? In the 60s and 70s, more tellers. I haven't been inside a bank in a really long time. I don't know about you. I don't need more tellers, right? They didn't have the context. No one in the research that I read said that they wanted their money to come out of a wall. Nobody said it, right? Because it didn't exist. And in fact, if you all remember this, some of you will, there were many banks that had a PR platform based on how dangerous people perceived ATMs were. And they said, we will never have ATMs. We will only give you more tellers because your safety is so important to us. If you don't have an ATM solution in your retail bank right now, you are going to be out of business very soon, right? The context has to change. Crazy ideas. If an idea isn't crazy, there's no hope for it. Okay, here's the second thing, not just context, but what I'll call mindset. And so this is my story of kids, and Jana and I laugh because I had no idea that she also has a son, Jack, and was going to use a picture of her son. But let me tell you, this is actually a personal story where change really hit me. And this happened a couple years ago. This is my son, Jack. He's 12, and Lindsay, who's 8. They're awesome. Awesome. And one of the things I like to do is I want to give my kids one of the best stamped passports. I've traveled to 40 countries, and I've been to 49 states. If you are from North Dakota, get up to me right after this. I'd love to see you. That's a bucket list thing I got to do. Anyway, I want to give them a best stamped passport because it's one of the benefits that I can. And I started taking my son a couple years ago on trips with me. And the reason I did this because I think it's especially important for Americans. It's especially important for Americans to get out and see the world, right? The future is happening, and it's not just here. In fact, it's happening everywhere, and you've got to look for it. And I started taking my son with me, and our first trip was to Spain. He's a huge football fan. He loves Barca. He loves Real Madrid. This was like Mecca for him. And it was interesting that when we went to Madrid and then Barcelona, and I noticed something that really made me pause and a little sad. And what I noticed was when we were traveling, whenever I just took Jack the first time, whenever he would see something new or taste a new food or see someone dressed differently or hear a different language or go to a new cultural experience, sometimes he would pull me aside, pull me down, and he'd say, Mom, Mom. And he pointed it and he'd say, that's weird. And I said, why is that weird? And he said, because that's not how we do it. And I said to Jack, do you realize that when people look at you and see how you do things, they think you're weird? And he paused, and he looked at me and he said, no, right, just no. I said, Jack, if you're gonna travel with me, you can't use the word weird. You have to use the word different. And the next time we went on a trip, it was really great. I could see the change in him. Anytime he would see something new or what he would have called weird previously, he said, hey, Mom, that's really different. His whole mindset changed. And that's one of those silly things, but I want you to think about when you are approached with something new, are you thinking about it in terms of weird? because weird sets up it's a psychological construct of good and bad, right? And when you think of something as different, that's open to possibility. So try and think of things in terms of different, even if you want your money to come out of a wall, okay? So let me do something with you now. I want to play a game. I'm going to play a game. This is a futurist game. My background is that I am a trained futurist, and I have a team of futurists, many of them who studied or are professors at the University of Houston Clear Lake, or in Singapore, or in Leeds, or in Manoa. It's a trained program. You can get your master's in science in it. And the goal of a futurist is to help companies come up with possible, probable, and preferable scenarios for change. Possible, probable, and preferable scenarios for change, right? The best way to predict the future is to create it, and you need scenarios to do it. And one of the games we play is we help people understand if they are really attuned to weak signals for change. Let me see by a show of hands here, how many people think that they are attuned or aware of weak signals for change? Just raise your hands for me. Don't do this, do this. Okay, some of you, all right. So this is the game, it's called In the News. And I'm gonna read to you some headlines that are in the news and are weak signals of what's gonna happen in the future. You have to decide whether these headlines that I'm gonna read to you are true or false. If you think the headline is true, you are gonna stand up and give me jazz hands, okay? If you think it's false, you're gonna stay seated with your arms crossed and look very angry. Okay, so get those books down, get ready, stretch out. I'm gonna read you the headline and then ask you to stand. Here we go, here's the first one, true or false. Jawbone, Redbox, and MIT are developing retail experiences driven on your behavior, right? Behavior is the next frontier. So in Boston, there was a pilot launched on April 1st, very cool, of Redbox kiosks, and they will read customers' moods and their profiles from their fitness tracker, right, from your Jawbone. And the idea is when you go up to the kiosk, based on your profile that it reads, it will recommend movies based on how you are feeling. Okay, recommend movies based on how you are feeling. If you think it's true, stand up, jazz hand. Look at this guy. He's like, I'm on it. I'm so on it. If I could put my legs up, I would. All right, stay standing, guys. Stay standing. Good. We got an angry person over here. I like it. Keep your hands up. So everyone's seated. I would like you to look at these people because these are visionaries, people, right? These are risk takers. These people are wrong. Sit down, guys. Yeah, you're wrong. You guys, you never start with a true. That's like a little hint, okay? All right, so, but why did you stand? What? Okay, sorry. All right, so why did you stand up? Why'd you stand up? Possible, probable, preferable scenario for change, okay? If it's not, it's already happening, right? These are the things of the next frontier, behavior change. So here's what I want you to think about. What other things are happening right now based on behavior, right? Those cool little marketing gimmicks that you see where you go, that's nice. That's a weak signal for change, right? Boop, boop, boop. And pretty soon it's gonna go boop, 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 everywhere, not just in the San Francisco area. And one of the cool pilots I wanted to show you is from Douwe Egberts, right? It's a Dutch coffee company. They're 300 years old. You've drank their coffee if you've been in any European airport recently. They did a cool pilot actually in South Africa at one of the airports where they wanted to actually be able to give people coffee, not when they asked for it, but when they knew they needed it most. So will you roll the film for me? Let's take a look. Okay, so pretty cool, right? Weak signals of change. And sometimes those silly little things where you go, oh, well, that's cute, could be an indicator of a bigger thing. So here's what I want you to think about with this one. Oh, let me give you one more. So this is Nigel. This is a BMW tricked out with 1,000 sensors, a Mini. And it was done in conjunction with USC. And the idea was, what else can cars do in the future? Anyone here work in the automotive industry? Anyone? Okay. Oh, over here. Okay, great. So you've heard of Nigel? Maybe? So the idea here is, how can we actually make a car do more things and maybe even help us be healthy? So we know when we go into the car, right, that we can actually put our hands on the steering wheel and we can see whether we can check vitals, but one thing you could check is whether your blood pressure is higher when you pull into the driveway versus you pull into your parking lot at work, right? We can actually see how much you weigh when you sit down, which could be very depressing, right? Phone your therapist maybe as well. We can also tell with things coming in through the vents if it's going to be a higher smog area, for example, and we can actually have the GPS reroute you to maybe a more or less polluted route. And this is the kind of thing in the future that will be very interesting in terms of your health. So we laugh, but I sit on the board of a couple groups within pharmaceutical companies. And one of the funny things that always comes up in the brainstorms is, where do people spend a lot of their time? Outside of New York City and some other metropolitan areas, it's in their cars. So why can't we put pharmaceuticals into the cars so people could actually heal while they drive? That actually might work, right? So in the future, what other things could be injected into your vehicle that actually could help you do things beyond driving? So let's think about this. How can technologies transform how and what you sell, right? And how will behavior-driven tech change your business? Behavior-driven tech change. All right, let's do another one, guys. I want you to feel better about yourselves after that first fiasco. Here's another one. Let me explain it and then see what you think. Okay, Boehringer Ingelheim, they're a pharmaceutical company in Germany, out of Wiesbaden and Mainz. And they have an issue that I think you all don't have. They work at a company where people tend to be very siloed, okay? And that was a joke, actually. Very siloed, they can't communicate very well with each other, and this was a problem for innovation, not just in early clinical development areas, but outside the lab, right? Marketing, procurement, legal, et cetera. And so one guy decided in IT that he was going to create an app, and he actually ended up putting it on, not an app, but just a small application he put on the internet. And he wanted to figure out a way to get people just to talk to each other over lunch. So he created something called lunch roulette. And the idea was you could input the time, date, and location where you were available for lunch. And it would do this kind of business matchmaking. And it would pair up someone else with you that had nothing to do with your function, your role, your job, so you could have new, diverse ideas over lunch. If you think that lunch roulette is true, stand up and give me jazz hands. Oh, see, now you guys are cocky. Now you're like, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. You think it's true. Keep standing. Kinesthetic learning, here we go. True or false? True or false? Oh, come on, you guys. It's true. Very nice. It is true. In fact, here it is, lunch roulette. And I met the guy who founded it. It was a couple years ago, too, that they did an article on it in HBR. And since then, he actually has taken the IP from Boehringer. They let him have it. And he's started his own company and selling it to other organizations. And I was in Basel. I was at Novartis a few months ago. And a guy came up to me who knew me, and he showed me on his phone the announcement for lunch roulette that had just been launched at Novartis, which is pretty cool. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Okay, collaboration, one of the most overused, bastardized words today in innovation. But here's what I want you to think about. How can you better facilitate change with simplified and diverse ways? Simplified and diverse ways. Okay, I only got a couple more here. Huggies Brazil has launched TweetPea. TweetPea is a sensor device that is attached to diapers, and it alerts parents on their smartphone when it's time to change the baby's diaper. TweetPea. Come on, stand up if you think it's true. Why not, right? There are some parents that are like, yeah, yes, I would love TweetPea. Okay, Jane's saying yes, okay. TweetPea. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's true. All right, so I couldn't believe it, right? This is one of those things where I'm like, really? Does someone have to tell me on my phone when I'm at dinner that I got to go home and change the baby's diaper? But it's true. Here it is, Tweepee. And you guys are all writing down the URL right now. You're going to check it out on your phone, right? Tweepee, can I get them here in the States? Does someone know Portuguese for me? Okay, and here it is. I love that it's sweating, like, oh my God, change my diaper. All right, and tweeting it to you. So that's interesting. My takeaway here, I had to throw in one social media one, is how can social media be used to solve, quote, real problems, okay? So this is one of those ones I throw in for fun. It's interesting, but there are many other ways, obviously, that we can use social media to affect real change. So what do you want to get out of this? I want to show you, this is one of the only eye charts that I'll have on here today, but this is so you can sound really cool at a cocktail party. Right? This is an emerging issues analysis chart. And I want to tell you, the purpose behind this is how trends start and where they end up are two totally different things. How trends start and where they end up are two totally different things. So how we identify change is, on the left-hand side, and this is how aware you are of something. And down here on the X is references or, quote, Google hits, right, over time. So the more hits something gets, or the more references you hear about it, and the more aware, right, the more evolved it is. So when a trend starts, it's emerging. It's that crazy guy in the office that's always coming up with those wacky ideas that you just want him to shut up. It's the guy in the garage. It's the weird inventor in the lab who's tinkering away. There's no investment in it yet. There's no acronym for it yet. It's still emerging. Right? It's that weird idea. It's the money coming out of a wall. Here it's framed. There's an acronym. There's investors, bloggers that are in the know are starting to talk about it. You're hearing it at a cocktail party and acting like you know about it, but you have no idea what it is. And then up here, right, it's mainstream. It's the cover of Time Magazine, Fast Company, whatever you want to say. Right? There are investors. There's a lot of money being made. There's starting to be talk around regulation. And then here it's resolved. It's plateaued. There are people on the hill. There are lobbyists. You are now handcuffed. There are no longer guardrails. Let me give you an example of how this is happening right now. Right now for you. So in 2004, when you all got your alumni magazine from Harvard, as I know you did, or someone was on campus and was reading in the Crimson, hundreds of people were registering for this new Facebook thing. Hundreds. Someone went into their boss at this point and said, hey boss, we got to get in on this thing. It wasn't called social media, that didn't exist. Sorry, I'm in your way, guys, here. And someone went into their boss and said, we really got to get in on this trend. And the boss said, that is amazing. Get back to work, right? Get back to work. Then up here, right, it's evolved. There's a blogger, you're acting like you know about it. It's now called a platform. It's bigger, it's social media, there's a term, there's investors. Here, it's on the cover of Time Magazine. Everybody knows about it. This is when I talk to millennials, I tell them, this is the moment when your mom has friended you on Facebook, okay? The game is over, right? It's over. You just start figuring out your filters now so you don't offend her. And then up here, this is where it's resolved, right? This is not about social media. This is about data. This is about transparency. And as we move into the era of behavior change and unstructured data, this is about the value of that data. So there are law firms, there are insurance firms, there are data firms right now that are trying to figure out, as we can put things up into the cloud, including your memories, how much are they worth? Who gets them when you die? So grandma dies, and I get the birthday memories, but my brother gets the holiday memories. Why? That's not fair. Those are the kinds of things that are starting to happen. So this is about something totally different than where it started. But here's what you need to think about. Down here is where you are influencing change. Up here is where you are taking orders. Where do you usually play? Now, this group obviously here, as I tend to see, you're usually lower on the scale. Outside of this bubble of activity that you live in most of the time, and sometimes in New York too, because they're driven so much by money, most people are up here, right? They think that they're like 2007 to 2010. Most people are around 2010, unless you're really maverick or you're a visionary part of your company. And you need to think about why. So I'll tell you why I think it happens on a daily basis for us. So there's been a lot of research that's been done around creativity and thinking. And from an early study from Synectics, and they've done this for over 20 years, they realized that when we get together as a group, right, when we collaborate or we innovate, or we're in a meeting together, typically people are thinking in one of three ways. And I'm curious now which one you're doing. So let me tell you what those three ways are. So the first way of thinking is that 18% of anyone in a group, 18% of you here, are laser focused on what I'm saying. Raise your hands if you're laser focused on what I'm saying. Right? That's a little more than 18%. Okay. 25% of you are having an unrelated thought or a sexual fantasy. Raise your hands. Okay, so, all right. 57% of you are doing something called on-demand thinking. Right? I don't even have to tell you what it is, in and out thinking. It's where you're thinking about something else, right? We're always multitasking. So you've got that meeting you got to go to, you got an email you got to send, you got so-and-so you got to report to. I'm talking, she's boring, oh my God, sexual fantasy. You engage, boring again, okay? That's the reality that you live in and the people that work for you. And that's why, as we eventually get there, I promise, there are some tools that need to be very simple around change. Because people live in a world of on-demand thinking. You do, I do. If anything is too complex, I'm probably not going to use it. So you have to constantly simplify. So let's talk about that. Why are we having such a problem simplifying? I think we value the wrong things. And these are the three things that I think, are a problem in affecting your culture. The first thing is that we are managing, not leading. In fact, one of the things I talk about when we go in and we talk with leaders and executives is we say that we are not grooming leaders, we are grooming professional skeptics. When I go in and I tell people about new ideas, they are more likely to tell me what is wrong with it for ad nauseum before they can tell me what's right. That's a problem, right? Their job, ultimately, they say that they need to take a risk. For many leaders today, because of Wall Street, their job is to eliminate it. And that's a very hard tension to balance. The second thing is this process over culture problem, right? We favor structural change more than behavioral change. And we're moving into an era of behavioral change. How will that tension rectify itself? And then the final thing is doing over thinking, right? My conjecture is that within inside companies, thinking has become a daring act. Right? Thinking has become a daring act. And I tell this story of I sit on a board up at 3M with some very patented people. They have many patents to their name. They're brilliant people, they're scientists, the geeks are my peeps. I just love them. They are creating the future right now. And I enjoy neuroscience a lot. And I was talking with a neurologist at cocktails, and we were talking about thinking and why it's so difficult for people. And he said, you know, Lisa, the brain is the most amazing organ. It starts working from the very moment you wake up in the morning, and it doesn't stop until the very second that you set foot into your office. Right? It's a daring act. Why is that? So what's the result of that if thinking is so daring? I think it's this. The complexity is making things too hard for us to think. I mean, when I ask you what you do all day, just shout out to me, what do you typically do all day? What? Meetings? Emails? Okay, I will talk to almost 100,000 people this year. I've done this for years. When I travel to different countries, regardless of the industry, the country, the culture, the size of the group or engagement, the first two things out of everyone's mouth when I ask that question, and I've been brought in to talk about innovation, is they spend their days meetings and emails. This is a problem. So there's a lot of complexity. The result of that is the biggest issue, which is complacency, right? It's the acceptance of, I'm not gonna fight it. Everything's fine, right? We've got a brand, it's all good, let's ride it out. And you may not think that you do that, but many people do. And Kill the Company came about from a very difficult experience that I had. So many people learn from good experiences. Unfortunately, I think my life is learning from very difficult ones very often. And I had an experience where I went down with a manufacturing company. They're a large conglomerate. You would know them if I told you who they are. And this was their top 50 within a business unit. And we were down in Raleigh. And we were brought in to help them envision the future. And so I kicked it off, and my trainers were going to do the afternoon. And we were doing all these exercises around like envision the future and from impossible to possible. And Within the first hour, I like to think that I can read body language. I could tell that no one was buying it. I mean, it really, I have to say, as a facilitator, it was such a painful, awkward experience. And so I called a break, and I literally just wanted to go to the restroom, and I wanted to stay there in the fetal position for as long as possible. But I had to come out, and I talked to one of the senior leaders there, and I said, what is going on? And he said, Lisa, it's not that we don't want to change, it's that we no longer believe we can affect it. And I thought, oh my God, if these are the top 50 in this business unit, what hope do the people working for them have, right? And so it was one of those moments of, well, I got nothing to lose, right? Either they're never gonna ask me back or I'm gonna be a hero. And I rearranged them. I put them into different tables. One was by function or by business unit. So you had the rocketry over here and golf carts here, and then you had procurement and legal, blah, blah. And I said, now that you're in your groups, I would like you to pretend that you are your number one competitor. And putting that hat on, now I'm going to give you 30 minutes, and I want you to kill your company. I want you to put yourself out of business. And it was like I had lit the room on fire. They were so excited to have an out-of-company experience, to be able to attack their company in a non-political way, to get their war mentality on, to look at what the weaknesses were without thinking about protecting themselves. Because how you usually do it is you do strategic planning, and that's very different than killing your company. Right? Strategic planning is when this is what you do. Every year, you look for last year's PowerPoint. You open it up, and the first thing you do is you change the date. That's what you do. Okay. Right? That's what you do. And then you go through all these other slides, are flowery and sound good, and then you get to the SWOT. And by the way, I like SWOTs, but I think they're way overused because they're the biggest slide and the thing everyone banks on. So this, plus the financials, of course, but strategically, a SWOT is this thing where you go through and you say, well, we have a lot of strengths, of course. Weaknesses, there's a few. Well, maybe they're not weaknesses. Maybe they're opportunities, in fact. And it's like this menagerie that we go through. Oh my God. I think the best thing you can do is to kill first. And so this exercise that we did with this company was they killed their company. They came up with all these things that were weaknesses, and then we figured out how to turn them back on their real competitors. And then we killed rules, we killed processes, we killed all kinds of things. And it was very freeing because it created the space for more. We don't give ourselves permission to get rid of. And why I want to tell you this is because this is the type of thinking that's resulting right now in companies. Right? I'd be happy to give you innovative thinking. What are the guidelines? Right? Just tell me what to do. Oh my God. There's a lot of cultures that are happening right now, and I'd like you to tell me which one you think exists in the group that you work in. Or if it's a small company, the company you work in. So these types of cultures, and the worst one isn't what you expect, which is really the purpose of this slide. But there's three icons here. One's the light bulb, one's a stick of dynamite, and the other one's the dimmer switch. So the first culture is the positive one. It's good. You all know what a positive culture is. And you've all heard of role models that are positive cultures, and you all hear the same names over and over again because there are very few large companies that have truly positive cultures. The second one is a negative culture, which is bad. I don't want you to work there, but I will tell you that change is either happening or it's imminent. Something's going to blow. They take risks. They may not be good, or they may be killer. They hope they don't get caught. I could put a lot of Wall Street firms in here, right? This is where I think most people reside. Worse, right? This is complacency. Maybe not at a startup, not at a mid-sized firm, but as you get larger, structure happens. So what happens here? It's routine and it's comfortable. We reward conformity. Everything's fine, right? I call it hug in the middle. So which one are you? Are you a light bulb? Are you a dynamite stick? Or are you the dimmer switch that then comes up and suddenly the light comes on and everyone says, oh, where did that startup come from? Who knew that they would be eating our lunch? So, I could litter a slide with logos of companies that have gone out of business because they didn't embrace change. But I want to show you big ones that are. And I'd like you to read up on them because they're really doing cool things that you don't expect. So let's take a look at this first one here. BMW and even GM. I'm a Detroit girl, so I got to give them some plugs. But the thing about the future is, and I'll tell you this little futurist thing, is that the reality is that demographics is destiny. Demographics is destiny. Barring a large geological event, and I mean a meteor, right? A genocide of epic proportions, a viral or medical event, demographics do not change. And that's why you follow the biggest group. That's why we as Gen Xers got hosed. No one cares because we're too small, right? It's why we love the boomers, but the boomers have paid their demographic dividend, guys. Game over in that area, except for healthcare. Now we focus on the millennials because they're about to pay their demographic dividend. Now the thing here with car companies is what has them running scared? A lot of people are going to be concentrated into mega cities on a global scale. And these companies are being very smart that they're partnering with cities to figure out how can they play in a space where not everybody will be able to own a car. Either they can't afford it or the infrastructure won't exist. So a lot of car companies are moving from selling cars to having mobility services. In fact, in the future, maybe they won't sell cars. Maybe they'll just own a piece of yours, or it'll all come together a little differently. Or maybe if you're Xerox, and Ursula Burns is the CEO there, and I adore her. She's great. She talked about how it's really great having a name that everybody knows is the name of the category when you Xerox something. And she said it also kind of sucks because then everyone thinks everything's a Xerox machine and they don't buy ours. So how do we go from being a document company? And she said, my job was to transition them into being a business processes company. And then another one here is if you're in publishing. Is anyone here in publishing? Okay. Publishing's tough, right? Very tough. So these are people that are going from what used to be just traditional ways of distribution to content and beyond. And I'm not talking about things like ebooks and things like that. I'm talking about sensory solutions, which I'll talk about in a minute. But what Macmillan did was really interesting is they hired a VC, gave him $100 million, and they said you may only invest in companies that will put you out of business, right? Only invest in companies that will put Macmillan out of business. And I'm going to keep going here, but the reason that this is important is they practice proactive obsolescence. How do you proactively put yourself out of business? Proactive obsolescence. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick quiz here, guys. Show of hands again, how many people are open to change? Who's open to change? Okay, I'm going to give you a quiz. So if you have a piece of paper somewhere, I'd like you to number it from 1 to 8. From 1 to 8. This is going to be easy. It's going to be very easy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you questions and see how many you can answer yes to. They're actually not questions, they're statements. Now here's the trick. When I read the statement, right? When you read the statement, I want you to think about not the big company you work in if it's a large company, but the group that you live and breathe and act in every day. So like your business unit where you have influence. Right? So this isn't complaining about mothership. This is about the group you work in every day. Second thing, when you read the statement, if your answer is maybe, that's a no. Okay, no cheating. Here we go. Just write down yes or no. Number 1. People in our organization actively think about how to push boundaries of what's possible. And they imagine how to apply trends to our business so that we stay ahead. Yes or no? Most of you will get yes on that. Number 2, our employees are comfortable asking provocative or even unsettling questions, right? It's uncomfortable to stretch thinking. Number 3, our people can think on their feet, and when they're faced with challenges, they can nimbly change direction. Can you all see here? Number 4, our employees do not easily give up on their beliefs and ideas when they encounter some kind of adversity or disbelief. They generally see them through. Okay, they don't give up. Number 5, our organization is constantly looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years, and we seek solutions to stay ahead of the curve. 5 to 10 years, okay? Not the next quarter. Number 6, we constantly seek to do things better than what's been done before. We push for improvement, even if what we offer is an established leader in the industry or it's successful. Okay? Constantly improving. Number 7, we purposefully hire people with diverse backgrounds, and we strive to create teams comprised of a variety of disciplines. Okay? This is your D&I question. Here's the last one. We often look at what other companies and industries that are adjacent or unrelated to ours are doing. We try to learn from them, and we apply their best practices to our own work. Okay, do me a favor and add up all your yeses. Look at your sheet and add up your yeses for me. And And now I want you to look at how you did. How did you do? 1 to 2 is status quo. 3 to 5, you're risk-taking. That's good. You're optimistic. 6 to 8 is what I call the please give me your resume category, right? Very few people get this. It's visionary, it's market maker, it's a change maker. I do this a lot, right? What's the average score that you think people get when I do this? 3? It's 3 to 4. It's 3 to 4. When I give this quiz and I change the statements into I statements and I make it about the person, I strive. What do you think the score is then? 8. 7 to 8, people. It's high. No, it's 7. But what's interesting about that is, and this is why I tell my clients too, they say, make them I statements. And I said, no, that doesn't do anything. The more powerful thing is actually give them the I statements and then the we statements to see the gap between them. Because what that tells me is, I want to affect change, and then the organization has these barriers that won't let me do it. Or your mindset won't let you do it. So let me tell you, now look at your sheet. Right, you have those 8 yeses or nos. What I'm going to ask you to do is turn 2 of those nos into yeses in the next 6 months. But let me tell you the skill that went with each one of them so you know which skill you got a no on. So here we go. Number 1 was about strategic imagination. Right? That's what I call dreaming with purpose. The second one is provocative inquiry. Most of you ask terrible questions. Right? I do if I don't think about them. You want to be very, very provocative. If you want better answers, ask better questions. Number 3 is agility. Number 4 is resilience. I would argue that this is the most important one up here. Number 5, future focused. Number 6, challenging the status quo. Very important. Number 7 is active collaboration. And I say active because most of collaboration today is called what? Meetings. Meetings suck a lot of times. Okay, number 8, what we call CPS, creative problem solving. Yeah, I know some people want to take a picture of it, so I'll do that if you want. All right, so look at your list now, and the ones where you had no's, look at the skills that you put next to them. Which no's do you want to turn into yeses? Your goal is not to get 8. Your goal is not to get all 8. I think that's a ridiculous, stressful goal. Try and improve yourself by 2. Okay? If you did this with your team, by the way, the goal is to have at least somebody covering one of these skills so you have it all together. You can't be all things. Okay? And if you are, you're a superstar. That's amazing. All right, so let's get talking about, I'm going to kind of fast forward here. If you want to have a better approach to change, we've got to change our approach. Okay? So let me actually just move through this. I believe a few things about change, and you can tell me whether you agree or not. The first thing is I don't think that change can be put on people. I think it has to be created by them. That's a big problem in companies. We have consultants, they come in, let's do change, here's the program, and everyone's like, great, here's the change du jour. People have change fatigue. We need to help them create it with us. Number 2 is, I think it has to be supported from the top down, but where it's driven is the middle out. These are the people that from the bottom people aspire to, and they say, that's me. And from the top, they trust from the top and say, I want to groom these people to lead. These are the people in the middle out that sit in the meetings and do the emails all day long, and they understand what you're going through. They have to help drive the change. I'm not saying that you don't need support from the top. If you don't have it, that's an idiot move. You need to have support from the top, but it's driven from a very different level. The next is, it can't be this 12-step program, right? It's got to be a toolkit. Everyone does things differently on demand, right? 57%. And then the last thing is, I think if it takes me a week to train you on it, you should never pay me to do it. It has to be, I think it has to be simple. All right, so let's get back up in this frontal cortex here. I'm going to give you tools for change, but I've got to get you right up in the front of your head. Who here, by show of hands, is good at math? This is performance marketing, people. I hope that everyone's raising their hand, okay? How many people can add 2 numbers together? Great, nailed it. Very nice. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We are going to add together out loud. Okay, so it's a group exercise. So I'll work it with you out loud, and when I say 2, you'll all yell 2. And then if I said 2 again, you'd add it together, and you would yell 4. You guys got this. Here we go. All right, I'll start with you, and I'll fade away. Together out loud, here we go. 1,000. Let's add it up. 1,000 and? 40. Good. Keep going. Excellent. Good. Good. You got this. Yeah. You don't have to give out a gift to these guys. They're not that. Okay, what happened? No one ever gets it right. It's really fun. I know what you're doing, by the way. You're checking my math, right? Checking my math. What happened? Shout out. We got to do a pattern. You got to do a pattern. Okay, great. So pattern recognition. This is a great example, guys, of what makes you really good as leaders makes you really bad as innovators. You are taught to find shortcuts, to be efficient, to get to the answer quickly. And so we all marched together right off the cliff, right? And if there's a big this is why looking for the weak signal, right, versus the popular trend is important, right? Because what happens is you're mistaking being in a groove and being in a rut. They're very different things. And when we all do things together, we think we're in a groove until the dimmer switch comes up, and guess what? You were in a rut. So this is pattern recognition. And sometimes that can be a problem because you don't look at individual pieces of information. Now, what kind of people get this right? What kind of people? Not you guys, that's for sure. But what kind of people? Mathematicians? No. Kids. I actually did this with the head. I know Harry, so I can say this, the head of Novartis, the CEO or the CFO and all his team. I did this, and I said, watch, all your guys are going to get this wrong. And the person who said it loudest said 7,000. Like, all right, so it's kids. It's kids up to age 10 or 11, about 5th grade, typically before standardized testing happens. And the reason why for that, and I think there's a purpose for standardized testing, by the way, but I also think what happens is we start to grow out of the realm of possibility, and we only look at things in terms of black or white patterns, right, multiple choice, instead of that crazy stuff that your kids do all the time when they build those weird Legos and it totally doesn't go by plan, but it's still kind of cool and it's different, but we don't get to do that when we get older, right? We have to follow patterns. We have to break that. The second thing is, you did something else. Does anyone know what you did as we were all shouting out loud? Okay, right? It was like following the pattern. You got into this groove. What else? Speed up. Speed up. You sped up a little bit. I can control that with the clicks, though. That's not fair. All right? You follow the extrovert. Right? This is particularly interesting in certain cultures, by the way, because the person who says it the loudest is the smartest and the most confident, and they must be right, right? And that's very hard for introverted people. And I often hear when I do this with people, you'll hear someone say 45,000, right? They'll change, and we do that all the time, right? Some of you probably did it because you think, oh, that can't be right, 5, and go with the group, and the group might not be right. So being different and questioning assumptions is a really important thing to do. All right, so Lisa, stop talking about the tools and start giving it to them. I have 5 minutes left with you all. Can we do this? Here we go. 3 tools, and what I'd love for you to do afterwards, by the way, I'm gonna, I think there's a table, Meredith or Jane can correct me if I'm wrong, that out by the refreshments where I'm gonna be. I'll have my book and I can sign it, but what I'd like to do is actually answer your questions then. I don't wanna do that here. And I'd also like to hear which tool you like the best, because that's very informative for me to know what the pulse of what people like and what they need. So here we go. Here's the first one. The first one is called assumption reversal. This is an easy technique. It's kind of an improv technique on steroids, but trust me, it's awesome. If you have a problem that you are stuck in a rut with, you've tried to come up with ideas and they all suck, this is your tool, okay? This is your disruptor tool. And what we do is we get together with leaders and we teach them the technique first, then we apply it to their business. And the reason why is twofold. 1, it's hard to reverse your own assumptions. And 2, with leaders, if you don't teach them the technique first and go right into business, they're gonna spend all their time telling you why all these changes can't happen. So here's the technique. The technique is take something that everybody knows. And in this instance, I use a restaurant. And I ask people, right in the room, I usually have like 50 people in a room, what are all the assumptions that you have about a restaurant? So what are assumptions about a restaurant? Just shout out to me here. They have menus, servers, what else? Food? Credit cards, what else? They give you water. Not everywhere, but yes, true, okay. Fountain chef, good, what else? Way to pay, what? Tables, good. Service, good. Bathrooms, it's clean. Okay, utensils, a license, a location, I could go on and on. And within a minute, I usually can get anywhere between 17 and 22 assumptions out of people. And then I ask them, do all those assumptions have to be true to make a restaurant? Do they? No, they don't. So we ask them to pick some assumptions and we reverse them. But we teach people that doing the reverse of something doesn't mean the opposite, it means the alternative. Doesn't mean the opposite, it means the alternative. So the technique isn't to say menu, no menu, location, no location. It's to do something like this. So let's say these are the three assumptions, menu, chef, location. And the reversal might be, it's no menu, a tablet, a waiter that reads your mind. Okay, and on, a celebrity chef, make your own. Or the location is, it changes each week, it's secret, it's outdoors. And bonus points, I stop people and I tell them, give me as many as you can, right? Money's no object. They pick their favorite reversals and then they come up with a brand new restaurant. And I will tell you that they are far out, sometimes scary, but very fun, right? And they said it's very freeing to think about the reversal because it gets them out of their assumptions. But then they'll always say, but those things would never happen until you show them that they do. So this is Donna Loire. Has anyone been to Donna Loire before? Right, 9 locations around the world, dining in the dark. And the idea here is you don't need lights in a restaurant. It's a sensory experience. You don't need to see your food. You should be tasting it. You should be smelling it. So in these locations, there's no lights. You're led by LED light to your small flashlights sometimes to your table. And in some locations, the waiters are blind. Or maybe this restaurant outside of Hamburg, there are no menus because you touch screen your order based on the 6 or 7 things you can get. And there are no servers because it comes down in a roller coaster to your seat in a box. So here's what I want you to think about. What assumptions are holding you back from creating things? I want you to think of a problem that you have. And I want you to be very specific. Don't boil the ocean, by the way. Like, my problem is our weekly status meetings aren't productive. Think of something. And then I want you to list the 20 truths about them. Assumptions are truths. It's true that it happens every Monday at 4 o'clock. We have a paper agenda. These people have to come. Those are the truths. And then I want you to reverse them as many times as you can. Here's a couple tricks. Do reversals that would get you fired. Ideas that would get you fired, would give the boss a heart attack if you walked in the room. And bonus points if you do this with somebody that knows nothing about your job. Because they're going to act like a child, right? Why can't you do these reversals? It's very hard for you to reverse your own assumptions. Okay, assumption reversal. Here's the next one. This, I think, will be your favorite tool if you are a boss. This is the tool that will make you feel like a hero, right? Everyone will love this. And I'm going to tell you a little parable to tell you the story. So the story goes that there was a scientist, and he had 10 monkeys in a cage. And he decided to perform a little experiment. And what he did is he put the monkeys in the cage and he put a banana on top. And he would wait to see the monkeys would all fight till one of them got up and got the banana. And as soon as that monkey got the banana, the scientist would douse all the other people, all the other monkeys in the cage with water. And the monkeys were mad. So he thought, let's see what happens. And sure enough, every day he puts the banana on top. One monkey gets up to the top. He's happy. He's eating the banana. Scientist pours water on all the other monkeys, and they're mad. By the end of the week, the monkeys figure out, don't let anybody go up and get the banana. And so he said, well, I'm going to play with this a little bit. And he says, I'm going to replace a monkey each week in the cage. Swap out an old monkey for a new monkey for 10 weeks. And sure enough, he does this. First week, he puts a new monkey in the cage, takes an old one out. What is the first thing the new monkey does? Goes for the banana, right? But all the monkeys start pulling him down. And sure enough, by the end of the week, that monkey knows, don't go for the banana. And at the end of 10 weeks, there are 10 new monkeys in the cage. None of them go for the banana. None of them know why. This is what happens to you at work. And this is why you're going to love the tool, Kill a Stupid Rule. Right, it started actually at Commerce Bank, now TD Bank, and the idea was they started as a bank that said, why can't we be open 7 days a week, open early and late? Why do we have to have plexiglass between us and the bank tellers? We don't need those things. But they got so big that they put a process in place called Kill a Stupid Rule. And the idea was, what things have we put in place, especially bosses, right, like me, that are holding us back from doing our jobs, or that have been in place for a while and maybe they've outlived their time? And in their first year, they saved $20 million just by getting rid of stupid rules. And whenever I do this with clients, I'll tell you, it's a really freeing experience. We have them come up with all different kinds of rules. And you give them, you tell them to come up with different rules they could kill, and you give them parameters. You say, first of all, there's red rules and green rules, okay? Especially if you work in a regulated industry. A red rule is something that you can't kill. It's industry regulated. You will go to jail if you kill it, okay? Don't touch those rules. Everything else is a green rule, and it's fair game. The second thing is, this can't be a bitch session. If you can't kill something but you don't like it, say what you want. What change do you want? And I'll tell you, when we do this with clients, we give them 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes, they want more time. And we give them another 15 minutes. They come up with so much stuff. And then we ask them to tell us what they came up with. And what's fascinating to me is what they come up with typically aren't rules. They're policies, they're procedures, they're cultural assumptions, they're HR things that have outlived their time, they're annoyances. There are many things that you could change and get rid of right now. And I call them quick wins. So here's what I want you to think about. If you could kill any 2 rules that hold you back from innovating, what would they be and why? Any 2. Try this with your team, guys. It will be I do it every year with my team, and I'm shocked by what they tell me they want to get rid of, right? Because they're my stupid rules. And I tell them that they're wrong, but that's okay. All right, so here's the last one, guys. So what I want to tell you about is, hold on, did I do this right? Yeah, okay. You don't have to go it alone. And one of the things was active collaboration on that quiz. So we have a tool within Adjacent Beyond, right? This is a bullseye tool. And you got to think about how to partner with different people to stretch your thinking, because frankly, sometimes you can't get out of your own way, or you're tired, or you know what I mean. So you want to think about how many partners could we come up with that are really new and different within our industry, even your competitors, or maybe even within your own company, by the way, if you're big, different business units. Adjacent to our business, like a vendor, a technology company, someone that knows you, but you're not really partners. And then finally, beyond, right? This is Oprah, this is NASA, this is a casino. Something totally different. And you can brainstorm things that will totally transform your business and think of something new. And I'll tell you one last story. And we did this actually with a group of lawyers at Novartis in Basel. Right, so these are Swiss and Germans working in pharmaceuticals, right? And they're lawyers. This is a restricted group. And I'm telling you, the lawyers are my best clients, by the way, because everyone thinks that they're not innovative, and their job is to teach people to be innovative within certain guardrails. And we were doing this within Adjacent Beyond, and at the end of the day, the oldest group that was there, we had like 6 or 7 groups, all brainstorming up at this bullseye, flip charts. And the group that had been the quietest all day was the one that was so excited to share. And these guys were like a moment away from retiring, a moment. But they were so excited about this. And they wanted to share for the legal group in Novartis how they could innovate their group within Adjacent and Beyond. So everyone was excited to hear what these guys had to say, and they thought that they would have no fresh ideas because they were the oldest in the room, by the way. And they came up with this. They wanted to partner with human resources. They said to get cooler people. And with marketing, because they were tired of being known as the Department of No, right? Or the Department of Maybe. Then Adjacent, he said, we want to partner with Google or some kind of cloud company. We got to get off this wet signature stuff. We got to get in the cloud. And we want to partner with GE because their lawyers are doing some amazing stuff. They know how to get contracts down from 300 pages to 5 pages. We should reach out to them. Someone here's got to know a senior guy at GE. And then the Beyond, he said, we want to partner with Facebook and Mick Jagger. And everyone at this point is stunned. And they said, Facebook, because we don't know what we're doing, we're old farts, we got to know about social media, so we're going to really get on that. And the last thing he said is, we want to partner with Mick Jagger, and everyone is stunned. And he said, let me explain. So he said, what you don't know about me is that I am a huge Rolling Stones enthusiast. I've been to over 100 shows, and people are shocked, right? And he said, I'm also a really good lawyer. And he said, I think we could get Mick Jagger on barter because he could use a lot of our drugs. Isn't that great? All right, so let me leave you guys with this. Who would your dream partner be for innovation? Bonus points again if you come up with a partner that would get you fired. Right? Give yourself some stretch. Partner that would get you fired. Okay, so I talked about in the beginning that I've got a team. These are some of my handsome people that work with me all over the world. And what we've realized from training leaders like yourselves is no matter how open to change you are, we can't make it happen. Right? We can't make it happen. The thing I want to leave you with is that change is a choice. You do not have to do it. You don't. But I want you to go back and think about that chart of emerging issues I showed you earlier. Do you want to be the ones that are taking orders, or do you want to be the ones that are influencing the change? And I hope you'll be the ones that influence the change. So with that, guys, I hope I see you after. I hope you'll tell me what tool you use, and I hope you'll get out there and make the change you want. So thank you. That was fun. Thanks.